Course. Thank you so much for the intro. Thank you everybody for joining today and giving us the floor for a little bit. Well, maybe you're eating lunch or just heading into the afternoon, or still in the morning on the West Coast. But great to talk a little bit about what we see in the industry, especially around engagement. Engagement's huge. It's huge with your staff. It's huge with your parents. And as Cindy mentioned, it all leads to retention. That's the outcome we're chasing here, and that we see is really impactful measurement, which certain organizations in the space certainly excel at. So just to start off a little bit, quick background about myself. I do run product for LineLeader, so I have the great responsibility to make the decisions about what we build in our software tools. I do traditionally have a little bit more of a software background, but have now been in the early education space for 5 years. Definitely not very long compared to our educators in the software world. 5 years, you're like a dinosaur. But yeah, it's not long, I know, for the educators, but I've learned a lot here. We've had a fantastic experience with our customers and within this industry for almost 15 years now, and really excited to share a little bit about what we've learned. And ultimately, my job in running product is to talk to our customers, is to learn from our customers. And in doing that, we get an incredible amount of data about what 7,000 organizations really across the world are doing in early education and what sets some apart from others and the trends that really carry them forward. And today we'll talk about that a little bit with engagement and how to coach up staff. So at a high level, we love to go over kind of what we call green light, red light, just a few really good reminders about how to engage with staff. What are some of the best techniques we see in coaching, and a few areas to avoid. Sometimes they seem a little bit like common sense, but it's really hard to remember to put these into practice. They're simple principles, but really hard to do well and do consistently. A little bit of a mindset shift for the best cultures that we see and how to foster a great culture internally. Best practices for engaging with families. This is where all roads lead, right? If we can engage with families on a really strong and high level, that's going to lead to retention. That's going to lead to retention. And then just some next steps before we head off. So those will be the big topics for today. All right, so let's talk about some of our green light, red lights up at the front. As I mentioned, simple, not easy, simple, but really hard to do these consistently and deliver on this every day. Every day, these can be hard to do. So hard stop, waiting to connect on an annual review. This happens with me too, and it happens with educators all the time, even semi-annually, right? You put a practice in place where you might say, hey, every 3 months, every 6 months, maybe every 12 months, we're going to do a review on your performance. How did you perform over the last year? And maybe I'll go throughout the year or throughout the first 6 months of the year and jot down some notes in a file about performance. And then we get to this review, and all of a sudden we're delivering this feedback that happened months ago. This is a really difficult way to engage with staff because this event happened so long ago, you're forgetting the key details about it. But two, you're not really giving the staff member a chance to respond to that, right? And they might be providing some critical information that we needed months ago that now is making this feedback sort of irrelevant, right? So feedback is really only as valuable as the moment in time you're able to deliver it in, because behaviors also change, and you're not really helping staff if you wait months and months to deliver feedback. That's not going to be super helpful. So think about the way you handle your review process with staff members at all levels of the organization. There are things that are helpful to do on a 6 month and 12-month basis. Of course, we can't look to, promote and change pay and change job titles every month, right? That's not sustainable. So there are these events that are great to do on kind of an annual or semi-annual basis. Reviews are not one of them. Feedback is not one of them. That needs to happen consistently throughout the year. So on the flip side of that, right, we do need to check in with our team on a regular basis. We always love the saying too, right? You want to deliver praise publicly and make sure you're always delivering constructive criticism one-on-one. It's a really, really good way to build a healthy culture there as well. Praise collectively to everybody in the building and with the organization when we have a staff member that's exceeding expectations and excelling in their job. And when there's an area to improve and an area to critique and an area to provide criticism, we want to do that in a one-on-one basis. But we need to deliver that feedback quickly. We need to deliver it in real time so we can have that conversation. The staff member can understand the feedback we're delivering, and most importantly, they can action it. So one of the stats we're going to show here, right? 58% of employees wish their company conducted engagement surveys. That's another thing to really think about. Do you survey the team? We do this both at our company for our customers and for our internal employees. It's a huge rally cry for us internally to see our employee satisfaction. And if that is trending up or down, we know that's super important to look at. And you want to make sure you're doing the same thing. Another way that surveys can be super, super powerful is you do tend to get feedback you don't always get directly. One-on-one conversations can be hard, right? They're not super easy to deliver. And staff members aren't going to be super open always to giving feed member back. So surveys are a really, really good way to offer people a chance to kind of give some feedback you might not get otherwise. So first one, make sure there's a constant way for you to engage with staff and deliver feedback as you go throughout weeks, throughout days, throughout months. Do not wait to dump it all at a 6-month or 12-month period. Okay, hard stop number 2 for the managers out there. Management's hard. Management's hard. I don't want anybody else to ever say otherwise. It's hard managing people. It's hard managing a large group of people, right? And there's a lot of rewarding things about it, but it is a difficult task, right? And there's a lot of ways to help your management style, and one of them is don't be overly rigid, right? We have to know what are things that are core to our culture, and we don't want to let up on those, right? You have a unique brand, you have a unique culture. You absolutely don't want to create gray areas in that. You have to make sure that stays what it needs to be. But from a management style, you do want to be a little bit flexible because you're seeing staff from all different backgrounds, and that's super important for learning how we engage with people, because people and staff members and teachers, they're going to respond differently in a lot of different ways. So make sure you're thinking about, for management people, for directors, for owners, for anybody that's sitting in a management position, we want to be flexible in our style. And for that, it goes into how do we adapt? How do we adapt to different personalities? We spend a lot of time investing in personality discovery at our company. We like to look at, there's a whole variety of different tests out there, which you don't necessarily have to do. But there's a variety of different tests which can kind of help understand how people are, how they learn, how they behave emotionally, right? And we like to plot that because it helps you communicate with people better, right? Are you somebody who's extremely high achiever, and what motivates you and gets you out of bed in the morning is success and task management and just getting things done? Those are fantastic people to have. You also need highly empathetic people, though, people that are driven by emotion and their commitment to the team and how the staff feels. And of course, in early education, how the children are feeling and that education aspect of it. And that's a completely different way to communicate with staff members, completely different way. To be honest, that's the same with parents as well, right? It's a little bit harder to do with families who maybe you don't spend as much time with. But as you go and you learn the families in your center, as your staff learn about the children in their center, there's different ways to communicate there as well, right? And we need to make sure we don't forget about that on the staff side. So 2 examples. Let's take Adrian the helper, right? In this situation, Adrian wants to explain how her actions are making things harder for her peers and her coworkers. That might be constructive criticism I want to deliver to Adrian. Hey, listen, your actions, they're making things a little bit harder for the team. Adrian's going to relate to that because she's a little bit more of a helper, of a feeler, and that's going to relate to her and have her understand, hey, I need to think about doing this differently because it's impacting the team. Positive behavior, on the flip side, express gratitude for her help and how this positively impacted others around her. So you can see we know Adrian, the helper, we would call that like a green color energy, right? Somebody that kind of thrives on kind of that empathy and that team feeling. And as a manager, I'm gonna construct my critiques and my positivity and my growth around that. Lisa on the other side, right? This example, the achiever. So if I'm giving constructive feedback to Lisa, I'm going to say, hey, your actions are maybe not going to help your growth opportunities here, Lisa. Like if you're going to get to that next level, we need you to work on a few things here. And that's going to really resonate with Lisa because she's growth focused. This is a career path for her and she wants to rise in that. And I'm gonna tailor my messaging a little bit differently to Lisa and Adrian. And of course, for Lisa, for positive behavior, I'm going to say, hey, this is going to make an impact on the business. Your contributions here are impacting the business and it's impacting your career. The two things should go hand in hand because at the end of the day, the growth of our staff is growth of families, it's better engagement with families, and it ultimately grows the business. So this can be really, really tricky, but it's really important, right? We want to cater our management style to our staff, and we want our staff to cater their communication style with the various families we have in the center as well. All right. Hard stop. Being afraid to receive feedback. Feedback is a two-way street. Feedback is a two-way street. We can't just dish it out to our staff members and not allow it to come back to us. So this is really, really important. And it doesn't have to happen all the time, too, right? We're not constantly 24/7 asking for feedback. That can be a bit draining as well. We do hear this concept called survey fatigue. At some point, if you keep asking for feedback and you're not actioning it, that's a problem of its own, right? But we have to make sure we're opening up a time for feedback. People want to feel connected to the organization they are working within. One of the absolute best ways to do that is provide a platform for people to speak up and feel heard and to action that feedback as well, as long as it's constructive to the overall business and the culture. So if you think about the way you operate your business or your center or the community you work within, make sure there's an opportunity for feedback and it's coming back up the chain of command. So on the flip side, we do want to ask for it. What I love about this slide here, what I love about it is we have a couple examples of how to deliver this, right? How can we refine our enrollment process? How would families like to see change next year? Any suggestions on classroom management or curriculum enhancements? These are examples, but the reason I like saying this is because the one thing we don't want to say is, how can I help? How can I help? That tends to not be a great way to get feedback, right? That is, people are extremely busy. Staff members are extremely busy. If you say, how can I help? What's something I can do better? It's not provocative. It's not asking staff members to really understand where they can add value, and it's not specific enough. So try to stay away from how can I help, what can I do better, and think about these constructive questions. What is one of the biggest challenges in the business? If it's enrollment, we should be focusing feedback around that. And it can be on your management style as well, though. I don't want to say it can't be, but we might want more constructive questions around how is the cadence with which we meet on a weekly basis, right? There's very direct ways you can go approach getting feedback, and that's going to give you a lot more constructive information versus kind of very generic questions. But as a start, we got to make sure we're opening up a place for feedback to come up the chain of command. One, it's going to help our managers be more effective. Two, it's going to help our teammates feel more connected to the business and the culture. But three, ultimately, we need that information. We need to know what our teachers and our staff members have to say because they're in it every single day. And that's going to be data that's going to help us make positive change on the business. All right, so a couple green light, red lights there on how to engage with staff members throughout the business, a little bit difference on management styles and how we can manage well and communicate with staff, because that is the start, right? If we don't have a great culture and a great way to communicate with staff internally at the center and at the corporate level, we're going to have a really hard time doing that back with families. So we're going to then shift a little bit into what makes a really good culture that works. Culture is really important. We kind of joke about it in the software world too. 10, 15 years ago, culture was, I don't know, do you have like ping pong tables in your office for people to come and play at during breaks? That's not really culture, right? That's fake. That's fake. What is culture is an area where we can build a community and a brand that matters and a place people can grow and they can feel they're contributing to the success of the overall mission. That's culture, right? It's not kind of parties and happy hours and ping pong tables and all these things that you see companies brand. It's really about growth and mission and contribution to that mission. So this is super, super important, and it's really important to think about culture and how people connect to that culture as well. So a couple things we really like here. Create a climate of accountability. The hardest time in running and operating a business is when you have to sometimes let somebody go, right? But when you do that, and we always wait probably too long to do that, you kind of sometimes feel this sense of relief with other employees. And that's a really harsh example of accountability, but it's the most transparent one where people feel like somebody wasn't adding to the culture of that team and you've relieved that pressure. You've relieved that pressure. So that's a really maybe harsh example, but those happen in little details all throughout the day. If employees aren't being held accountable, it's impacting the rest of the team, right? And staff and employees and coworkers and directors and everybody starts to feel like, why are they not being held accountable, right? And why are they hurting our culture and mission? And it's making it actually not as much of a fun place for me to work. So accountability, it doesn't have to be harsh and aggressive, but it does have to be upheld, right? And if we aren't upholding our culture, if we aren't making people accountable for our culture, we don't really have one, right? It's not really genuine. Believe every employee can grow and improve. Yeah, this is fantastic. Most people want growth. Most people want growth. Not everybody. Actually, a lot of people are okay with where they're at. But even if they don't want career growth, there's some sort of growth they want. Maybe it's growth they're seeing their skills and their ability to educate. It's growth in the children, quite literally, as they're progressing through your center. But a lot of times people are and staff members are going to look for growth in their careers. To me, that's a huge, huge part of culture. When I join a culture, that's almost the number one criteria for me. I want to foster internal growth. I want to organically grow. I want to be at a place where we can all see the success happening together and all contributing to that success happening together. And that's going to create growth for all of us. So this is really, really important. We always say too, you want to believe you want to believe in your employees first, and then maybe question secondly. So believe in positive intent, and every employee should have the ability to grow, unless they really, really prove otherwise that they're not the right fit. Be willing to slow down. This is hard. This is really, really hard. And I empathize an incredible amount for educators in this. There's not a lot of time to slow down, especially when staffing's a concern, especially sometimes when you don't always have full staff and you're maybe not at liberty to hire the way you want to hire because we just need to get staff in the door. And when you're under ratio, even when you're not under ratio, even when you're at ratio and you're fully staffed, you're so busy. You're so busy and there's so much you're doing. So this is really, really hard, but it's important. It's simple, but hard. That's a lot of these things. They're not complex, but they're really hard to do and they're hard to do well. We do need to find time to slow down and coach, because if we're not giving it a chance to coach, we can't do number two. Like we can't provide a place for our team to grow if we're not providing a place to provide them feedback. And this is a hard thing to do, but super important. So take a step and pause and remind yourself, think about this, like, hey, are we actually coaching? Are we coaching up our staff? Do we have regular intervals to check in on this? Really, really, really important. Don't dominate, accept feedback. As we talked about, this kind of filters into a lot of different areas. If you have team members who don't feel like they have a platform to speak up, they're not going to feel like they're contributing, and they're not going to feel a part of the culture. They're not going to feel a part of the growth. They're not going to feel a part of the success. Sometimes even some of the failures. You want to feel a part of that too, right? Because that helps feel part of the success when you realize maybe what we did that we can improve on, and we do improve on it. So feedback is huge. That survey tool is huge too. Anonymous feedback does have benefits to it, mostly that you get it and you receive it. A lot of times people aren't comfortable giving feedback non-anonymously. So think about that as well. But yeah, we have to make sure it's a two-way street of feedback. And also, it's just going to help you. It's going to help you innovate. It's going to help you respond because you're getting feedback from teachers. You need that. You need that because you're not in the situations they're necessarily in all the time. Encouragement, of course. This is something I think educators do incredibly well, much better than other industries. But make sure this stays up. Make sure this stays up. I think this is one that you all do incredibly well. Very, very thoughtful, care about the communities and the teams we're working within. But this is important too. A lot of times we forget that just somebody having that comment about how well they did something can make their day and make their week. And sometimes we forget how those little comments just make all the difference. So encouragement goes a long way, and that's critical to cultures also. And we want to get excited. We want to build excitement about the things that matter, and engagement's huge. You see some of these centers out in the space and directors where every single family that walks in the door, they know their name, they know everything about the families, they're ready to welcome the child in. That's going up and above, but that type of engagement, that type of excitement is retention. You're never going to lose these families, right? That's kind of the gold star standard of engagement. And it starts with the culture. If you're going to build a culture around that with you and your staff and your centers and your corporate office, if you have one, that's going to translate to the way your staff engage with your families. And that's an extension of your team. So encouragement, excitement is huge. I don't need to preach on that so much though. Y'all are incredible at that in this industry, and I know you do it very well. So a couple things that really will drive culture. Take a moment to think about these things as well. If there's a couple areas you can rank them, hey, which one of these do we do really well, and maybe where do we not do as well? If you're on the staff or teacher side too, think about these things for your business also, and talk to your director or assistant directors. And hey, I think we could do a little bit better in this area or this bucket, and they'll be receptive to that. So really, really good buckets to kind of rank where you excel and where you can improve. And we always can always improve. All right. Shifting into kind of the topic of the day, right? We talked a little bit about how we can engage with our staff members from a management style perspective, what kind of fosters and builds that culture, but it leads to family engagement. I think every single time we survey the world of education, we see three things that always come to the top in terms of challenges and the most important things to do, right? One is staffing and getting in great staff. One is enrollment and getting children to fill the centers. And one is retention, retaining families. These are always, always, always three most important topics, or three of the most important topics for educators, really globally across the world, not even just in the United States. Engagement is huge because, as we like to say, and we've said from the beginning, it impacts retention. It is very we call it expensive to bring a new family into your center. You have to pay to market to them, you have to pay to spend time with them, you have to pay to get them through tours. All of this is cost. It might be a cost of time, but it's a cost, right? And it's not nearly as expensive to work with existing families. Not to mention, you provide excellent care. You don't want to lose that ability to provide care for that family. So retention is absolutely critical. It takes the burden off enrollment a little bit. Of course, children are always going to age out, so we're always going to be focused on enrollment, but retention is key, and so is enrollment, and engaging with families impacts both of those. So let's talk about that a little bit here. So we spend a lot of time at LineLeader doing what we call customer journey mapping or even parent journey mapping, which is this exercise where we think of what is every touch point a parent has with our software or with a child care center through their journey, right? And we start from the very beginning. All right, very first is you go type into Google or you see a billboard and you inquire about care. That can be a little bit of a messy process sometimes, right? Maybe that can be messy. Are they not getting information back quickly? How do they go find everything they want to find about your center right away? I'm just in that exploratory phase. I'm just looking. Maybe I'm a mom who is not even, I don't even have a child. I'm expecting in several months and I'm already starting to learn about care, right? So that's moment number one. Number two is okay, now I'm moving through this process. I find a place I like, I have to register. That's a bit clunky. That can be a tough process. It's a ton of paper for both the parents and the center, right? You get these packets back that are kind of a mess, and you have a really hard time understanding them. Not to mention they're impacting their information that impacts licensing requirements. So you need to make sure that's really, really clean and clear. There's a lot of things that still aren't online, right? And one of those things as well is payments. You definitely want to make sure we're offering parents a really clean experience. People want to make payments online. Nobody really even has checkbooks anymore to go to drop that off. And God forbid, we never want to see cash anywhere. That's a really, really rough thing to handle as a business. And quite frankly, parents just don't carry it. So we need to make sure we're offering these online payment solutions. We want to have ways make it simple for parents and the parents experience to engage with the tool, to log into the tool, to get through this process, right? Very, very digital forward, millennials and Gen Z. And self-serve is huge too. This has changed so much in the last 5 years and really in the last 10. I can tell you that when I first started in this industry, I think as a whole, we were really, really hesitant to allow families to do what we would call like self-tour booking. They could land on the website and book their own tour. And as an industry, collectively, we said, hey, this is childcare. It's the highest trust industry. It's early education. It's the highest trust industry, one of them in the world. We need to talk to these families. We need to talk to them and they need to come through us. Well, that's true. This is all true, but the digital world has surpassed that. And parents want self-serve options. So we need to make sure we're offering them that. If you don't allow a family to self-tour book on your website and the center down the street does, they're going to go tour that center first because it was easier. Because it was easier. And now they have an opportunity to go enroll in that center before they come to yours. So there's little things like this we see shifting. We call this kind of that parent experience, that family journey. And we're going to look for places where it feels clunky, where it feels not crisp. And that's where we'll go and try to develop tools and feedback and engagement strategies to make it a great experience. So best practices, let's dive in. Number one, improve lead response time. So this is really, really important. And it kind of leads right off of what I just mentioned about, the other center having an opportunity to get in touch with parents first. We, as millennials, which is a generation I'm in, and even Gen Z, which now you're seeing as guardians of children, are expecting really, really quick responses, Everything comes back digitally and everything comes back quick. For those that do still want to call the phone, that's a fantastic way to engage. We just don't see it as much, right? We just don't see it as much anymore. So we want to make sure that we're getting immediate responses back to families. So think about the process you have for enrollment, and that's the very first engagement you're making with families. We also talk a lot about the power of your brand, how important your brand is in creating retention with families. And that starts from the very first touch point they ever have with your brand, ever. And that's going to be the email that goes back to them when they say, hey, I want to learn more information about your center. Or they're going to go online and book a tour for next week, and something's going to come back telling them to get excited about that tour. That's the very first touch point, other than maybe seeing something about your brand out in the community. So think about that. It needs to come back quick. We want to deliver information, and we want it to be something that's going to get them excited and connect directly to your brand. That's really, really important. Speed is really, really important in that first response back, and it doesn't have to be a human touch point. It can be digital, and probably should be. Along those lines, we don't want to be a one channel communication process. One, because it's going to suck up a ton of time from your staff, but two, because it's just not efficient and it's not a great way to go communicate with families. Texting is by far the best way to communicate with parents today, which I know seems a little bit crazy, but we see higher response rates through text than any other channel. I can hardly even use my email inbox anymore because it's just filled with junk all day long, all day long. So I'm way more receptive to a text message because I see it and I open it and I read it. So this has to be something that you have in your process. Of course, once families end up enrolling, we would of course say at that point you need a mobile application they can log directly into, which is going to be so much more effective than email as well. And now you're even getting into like push notifications, right? And these things that are highly, highly active for parents. But backup and prospecting, you need to have texting as an option. It's just such a good way to communicate today. We still want to do email. Email's cheap. It's easy. There's no reason not to, right? Even though I said, hey, I'm not even looking at my inbox that much, it doesn't cost a lot to get an email delivered there. So it's still a method we want to have open. We need to have phones open too. If somebody's going to take the time to call you, you're still incredible at what you do and talking about your brand and your experience and your tour and why your curriculum is unique. You can't beat that. Artificial intelligence bots can't beat that. You just don't have many parents doing it as much anymore, right? It's a much lower method of communication, but we still should have it. We don't want to constantly have parents going to voicemail because those that do call tend to get a little bit frustrated by it. Social media is huge, right? We know Facebook and or Meta is a very popular place to go engage with families. So can Instagram. So make sure you do have a social presence that's helping create a brand. Again, these younger generation of parents care so much about brand, so much about brand. So if they see you out in the social space, that's going to help them connect with it. In direct mail, we maybe don't see this as much. This is definitely the one that's trending down. I would say don't lose sleep if you're not doing a lot of direct mail. But what I will say is advertising within your community can be crazy impactful. So maybe you're not necessarily doing direct mail or direct flyers, but you want to, if you're in a smaller community, right, you want to make sure you are advertising within that community because that's incredibly impactful as a communication method, and it does work quite well. So self-service options, I can talk about this a little bit more. I've already roped it into a couple of other points about being quick to reply. We see about on average for customers that use our self-touring feature, you see anywhere between 20 to 30% of every family, of every inquiry come in via that method. Come in via that method. So think up to 30%, 35% of every tour is just booking itself, right? This is critical. This is giving again parents the ability to kind of control that process, which I know is sometimes hard to let go of, but you have to because they control it in every other aspect of their life digitally now. So you want to give self-service options. We see it with registration packets as well. We see 70% of parents filling out and guardians filling out registration packets at 7 p.m. at night. They're doing it when they're done working, right? They're doing it when they have their time. So you can't only have them engaging with you when the center's open. That's not going to work out compared to what your competitors might be doing in the space. So you got to give self-serve options. One, because guardians prefer it, to be quite honest. And two, it's just more efficient. It allows them to still do things when you're not open. We talked a little bit about paying tuition too. If you're not accepting every single payment digitally, you absolutely have to be. It's honestly just too big of a risk to your business to be doing anything else. Even if you're manually running ACH payments, that's way too archaic, quite frankly, right? You need to have digital ways for parents to be paying tuition always. Any sort of fee should be coming digitally. That's kind of what parents and guardians expect today. Waitlisted families. For those of you on the call that are in a great place to have wait lists, which everybody sometimes does in different age ranges, right? Maybe not across the board, but this can be tricky as well. We're saying, hey, you got to focus on the centers you have in the business. You got to go bring new families in the door. And hey, on top of that, actually go make sure you're actively managing your wait list too. It's like, okay, well, how in the world do I have time to do all this? It's hard. It's definitely hard. But there are tools to do this. There's automation to help do this, but you want to stay engaged with your wait list. It doesn't have to be crazy, crazy heavy, but these are the next group of families. These are the next group of families. Absolutely. And even if you have a really, really healthy wait list and you're like, you just know it's 50 people long and no matter what, you're going to have somebody coming in the door, this still is that experience and connection you're creating with families. And if you have them on a wait list for 180 days and then say your spot's open and you never talk to them for those 180 days, that's not creating the best early on experience versus maybe every 30 days somebody's on a wait list. I should be sending something to them, right? I should be sending something to them. Maybe just reminding them about reviews, why we're great at what we do, sending some kind of gift guides or saying, hey, happy birthday, because we know it's the child's birthday and a little reminder. Parent resources. Parent resources are huge just to let them know, hey, not only do we care about your child, but we care about your ability to help parent as well. And we're going to help you along that journey. Video testimonials are great, gives them something to watch and engage with. You don't have to go overboard here, right? Time is a resource. We don't have an unlimited amount of it, but you can use technology for this too. You want to manage your wait list. You want to keep families engaged on your wait list, and this is going to make sure they don't get off it. And if they don't get off it, it's going to really help keep your enrollment numbers up and high. And more importantly, it's helping retention because you're immediately creating a connection with these families through that enrollment process. This one's really, really important, and not many people do it well. Re-engage parents or guardians who need additional support. Um, parents are going to withdraw, guardians are going to withdraw their kids. There's various reasons. In the best case scenario, they're alumni. They've aged out. They're no longer in care. In a worst case scenario, they left because they weren't happy. There's kind of this middle of the road scenario where, hey, listen, maybe one of the guardians is just going to work from home for a little while because costs are high. There's kind of these middle of the road where they just need to take a break from care. And these are really good opportunities in families to re-engage because they weren't unhappy with service, right? They still have children that are eligible for care. They're just something has come up that has had them make the decision to drop out of care. You want to be in front of these families and reminding them about the service and the value you provide because they're a really, really good opportunity to bring back into care, especially when they realize what they're missing when they end up taking their children out of care. So this is something we don't see a lot of people do well either. You're kind of like, okay, you're no longer here, out of sight, out of mind. But this is a group we want to engage. So we want to have some system to tag and know this. Hey, did these families withdraw because there was some factor that just didn't make care right for them at this time, but it wasn't our service, it wasn't our culture, it wasn't our community, it wasn't our staff, right? So they're a great candidate to bring back in at some point. So we got to make sure we have ways to kind of communicate back with them as well. And all of this can happen digitally, right? This isn't something you have to do constantly manually with phone calls and individual emails and texts. There are tools out there that can help you do this automatically and just stay front of mind. Ensure enrolled families feel included. This is again back to the one that's kind of like it seems obvious and it's super simple, but it's a little bit hard to execute. We started using the data point that you want around 10, we'd like to call them moments, but sort of 10 engagements about a child, an enrolled child a day. That might sound really, really high, but it might be, hey, this is what we served for lunch. They went out to the playground. They've had this kind of moment. Look at this picture of them with their classmates at circle time. So 10, it gets you hit 10 pretty quickly, especially when you're talking about things like potty moments or food moments. They don't all have to be extremely specific to the child. Some of them we do want to be, right? Show the artwork they're creating or a dance they came up with. But this is huge, absolutely huge. This is the number one factor we see relate to retention is the ability to consistently engage with guardians about their children as well. So really, really important on this one. We talked a lot about feedback and how it's a two-way street. You want to get it from your staff. You also want to make sure you're getting it from your families. I'm sure you do. You're like, hey, well, I get more feedback from families than I know what to do with. And a lot of times you probably just get the harsh stuff, right? A lot of times you probably just get the harsh stuff. But it's good. We want that. We need to action it. We know parents can be upset sometimes, and we need to receive that feedback. We want to receive good ones as well. So think about ways to encourage families to give you feedback. Transparency is huge to consumers and to millennials and Gen Z guardians. So if you can capture feedback and you can be transparent about that and make it part of your brand and not seem like you're hiding things, that's going to resonate. That's going to resonate really well. Extend education to parents and guardians. This is, again, something we see certain educators do really, really well. It's not just about taking care of the child, right? You are only one part of that child's life. The vast majority of it, they're still spending with their guardians. So the ability to not only communicate and receive feedback from guardians, but help on the parenting side is really impactful. Again, you're kind of you're creating this community, you're creating this relationship that you're here to kind of help out parents and guardians as well. That relationship can be super impactful, and all of this goes back to retention. You're creating this bond with families. They feel a part of it. You're helping them grow as much, especially those first time parents with first time children. Maybe if they're bringing their fourth child through your care, you're going to know, hey, listen, maybe we don't have to go as hard on what to do with biting here. This is their fourth child, but if it's their first and it's an infant, right now we can really start to play on this because we understand how important it is to these families, and that's going to create that bond. Drop off and pick up can be chaotic times. Technology can help with this too, right? It can make it a better way to communicate with parents. This is super impactful for licensing and ratios too, right? We need to know when kids are coming so I can make sure I have the right staff in the right room at the right time. So there's ways to think about how are we getting informed when parents are dropping off and picking up children. We know when they're supposed to be here. Does that mean that's when they're here? Probably not most of the time. So are there tools out there you can use to help parents communicate, hey, I'm super late. I'm going to be an hour late. Hey, I'm coming early. These things, if you know them ahead of time, can help you manage drop off and pick up. And ultimately, what this is going to do is, A, it's great for parents. You're there with their child when they need to pick up, but it's great for you as well because you can make sure you're managing ratios if you have children that are kind of late to arrive or early to arrive. And wrapping it up here on our 10 best practices, um, use data. We always do this one last because this is the hardest one to do. You need to make sure all those other things are happening. We have a great culture. We're engaging with families. We care about those on the wait list. We're posting content for our enrollment families. We're staying engaged. We know how to deliver feedback and encourage feedback from families. We have to do these things first. We just have to make sure we're doing them. But once we do, and if we understand them, and if we have a tool to capture this feedback, and we have a tool to understand why families are withdrawing, and we have a tool to understand how many families are on the wait list, or who's interested, or who's coming in via self-tour and not, right? Um, then we can do things with that data. And now we can really try to grow our business. We see so much data about childcare operators wanting to expand their brand. You can't really do that until you have the data and understanding of where you can really double down on. So if there's been a lot of content I've shared today, and you're kind of you're thinking through a lot of things you can implement, this one I know is a little bit as can be a little bit hard to implement, but it can make the biggest impact by far. So number one, make sure you're capturing data. Like, you know what's happening with your families and your enrollments and your wait lists and your withdrawals. Capture it digitally. And once you do, now you can start drawing insights from it. And that's really impactful. So just to recap again, what we talked about a little bit here today: provide flexible and adaptive coaching, shift your mindset to a culture that works, focus on lead response time. It's so important to get parents early and guardians early in the process. Establish regular communication channels. Save time by offering self-serve options. Re-engage or provide resource and materials for waitlisted families. Re-engage parents and guardians who need some support. Ensure enrolled families feel included. Encourage and facilitate family feedback. We've talked about feedback a lot today. Extend education to parents and guardians. Make drop off and pick up a breeze, and get to that last step where you can track things and actually action them. So I hope that was insightful. We absolutely love partnering here with NCCA and for the members. There are many solutions out there that can help with a lot of the things we talked about today. We're very proud of what we've had a chance to build. So if you want to give a chance to check us out and what we do and how we help educators and operators in the space, please do. And we always want to send a special offer out for this community. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Teddy. We appreciate you so much today for taking the time to present this amazing session. I do want to bring up a question that we did have in the chat from Cindy. So Cindy, if you wanna just unmute yourself and go for it.
Hi, Teddy. Thanks for all the great information. It's definitely a very broad topic. And, family engagement sometimes, gets lost in the busyness of the day in the center, and that's unfortunate. But fortunately, there are ways, now with technology, uh, where teachers are able to at least send messages to parents and pictures of their children and the things that help with that piece. I would ask, though, something that came to mind that I've seen a lot in my years of experience is when you have that really great teacher for children. I mean, she is an A plus, but in spite of all the coaching, she's, a C minus close to a D on parent engagement. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or maybe there's somebody, out there that, has conquered that beast on how to manage that situation. Because we have two customers, the child and the parents, but the parents write the check.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think at the end of the day, I think number one is you make sure you have staff that are a good culture fit for your organization, and they're taking care of children, and families are responding well to the care they're delivering. But we know that's temporary, right? We know there's such a connection being made through engagement that even if you're delivering this incredible care as a staff member and we're not getting a chance to share that and connect with families, we might not get negative reviews from the family, but we might not retain them, right? We might only keep them for a year or maybe two because they're kind of losing connection with the school. I think there are ways we can definitely use technology to help these staff members out, and that's what we see maybe work well. it's hard to consistently engage with parents and families throughout the day. So we would just encourage y'all to look at the digital tools in the space that can help with this. That can help with this a lot. So that would kind of, I think, be one thing we see sometimes work well. I know there can be a resistance to technology, but we certainly can't help teachers be better teachers, but we can help save them time by connecting and engaging with families through technology.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Did anyone else have any questions for Teddy? All right. Well, Mariah, I did have someone also ask me in a separate conversation about getting their certificate. Would you remind our audience how that happens?
Exactly. Yes, of course. So I'm gonna put this in the chat right now and then it will pop up again at the end. But if you complete the post-viewing survey, it'll ask you a couple of questions about today's session. If you'd like more information on LineLeader, and if you have any topics that you'd like us to review in future webinars. So please complete that. Once you submit it, it will be issued to you through Certify'em. Check your spam. Sometimes it goes to spam. But if not, you should have it in your inbox within like 30 seconds after completing the survey. So that will spit it back out to you, and that's how you get your continuing education for today's session. This will also be sent, the recording will be sent in an email along with all the goodies that LineLeader did provide, some great downloadable worksheets and like looks like a best staff experience platform and a complete toolkit for childcare leaders. So definitely download that. I will include that in the follow-up. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to direct them to our LineLeader family. So thank you so much, Teddy. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, keep quacking away at LineLeader. I love the fact that you call yourselves quackers, that you're a fun group.
Part of
So
the culture. It's part of the culture. We love it. Yeah.
yes, and I want to emphasize that fun is should be a part of every, childcare and early education environment. Because I think that when everybody's having fun, even the parents, they look forward to visiting, the center twice a day. So, and one of the best communication pieces of all times, when parents enter a room, is the smile from the teacher. And I think everybody can muster up a smile, especially if they enjoy children enough. And you know that speaks a lot of a parent that engages a parent, believe it or not, is that smile. So along with the other great tools that like LineLeader. So thank you, and I want to thank everybody that is out there doing this very essential work. We're trying to, on this end at NCCA, trying to work to build an alliance and awareness and an awareness of advocacy and how all of you can participate in being an advocate for your chosen profession, because we know that you need to be recognized with more respect and also more compensation. So we have a newsletter that goes out every month and it tells you how to do that, and it's coming out today. And if you are not someone that gets our newsletter, you can go to nationalchildcare.org and request it. The best way to do it and support advocacy, of course, is joining the National Child Care Association if you aren't already a member. And then it will come to you every month and it will give you ideas on how to be an advocate. And it will also feature some of the benefits like LineLeader, offers our members. So thank you all very much. And most especially, blessings to everyone that have spent their life in this industry.